The Year of Carter Higgins is a novel about a young high school girl, through the help of unexpected friends, overcome the tragedy of her best friend. I sit down one-on-one with the author of the novel, Camryn Teder, for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Camryn Teder.
Yes.
It's so great to meet you.
It's so great to meet you too.
I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah.
I know your father reached out to me last week on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that obviously you're a senior at iconic like Wando High School, and you actually just published your first novel about a young girl and how she, with the help of unexpected friends, overcomes the tragedy of her friend's sudden death. And the book is called The Year of Carter Higgins, and it's published on Amazon. And I'm wondering, how did Camryn and The Year of Carter Higgins meet?
So I've always been very interested in writing, and I've always wanted to do that for a career in the future. And so I kind of wanted to get started on the path of writing, especially this year. It kind of spoke to me when a lot of kids at my school had been killed in car crashes. So very tragic, very serious stuff. And so in around January, I kind of had the idea of, why don't I write something this year and actually publish it? Because I've been writing a lot just by myself on Google Documents, just kind of little drabbles of stuff that kind of interested me. And I really wanted to make something of it, make a project of it. And so I wanted to do something kind of that mattered. So I decided on the topic of a best friend dying. So it's a very serious subject, but as like an emotional teenager, I thought this would be a good subject for me to write about. So that's kind of how I found the topic itself. And yeah, so I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
And I read basically the synopsis of this particular book on Amazon, and it reads this in the beginning. Dylan Anderson has lived in Alliance, North Carolina her whole life, and she's not happy about it. Can you describe Dylan Anderson to me?
Yes. Okay, so Dylan Anderson is a character that I kind of based a little bit off myself. Obviously, I think we all kind of do that in our lives.
Yeah.
And so she's always been a more cynical person, a bit more kind of unhappy about her life. She struggled with depression throughout it. And the death of her best friend really kind of highlights this as she goes even more into this depressive state, and she's struggling with her emotions even more. So she's a very, how do I describe this? She's a very, I don't know, kind of unstable person. She's struggling with teenage emotions growing up, as well as this horrible tragedy that's impacted her life. So she's really just kind of an average teenager, as you would expect her to be, kind of moving in through life and trying to find her way. So.
And let me go back to Alliance, North Carolina, because obviously she wasn't happy about living there. What was it like for everybody else that was living here at that time?
Alliance, North Carolina, I really kind of in the book focus more on Dylan's perspective and of things. We don't necessarily know how others may see the town itself, but in the book she's really connected with her neighbor, whose name is Ida.
Okay.
And she kind of has the same perspective of the town itself. It's kind of not the best place to live. All of North Carolina is very beautiful, but I made up this town to be kind of not that way. So yeah, everyone kind of has that perspective of the town it's not so great.
And it also reads this in the synopsis, with her mom's obsession with a famous ex, her less than perfect job, and unneeded attention from a school bully, it just kind of makes sense. I know this might be off the beaten path, but what was the typical day for Dylan in your mind?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, Dylan, obviously a high school teenager, so she spends the majority of her time at school. But in the book, I kind of jump from things happening before the death of her best friend and after. And so before, we see her kind of, dealing with school life, dealing with the school bully, coming home, maybe going to work, or hanging out with her best friend Carter at the place which she really likes, which is called like the Docks. I just call it that in the novel. And then after his death, she's kind of struggling with keeping up with all of this, so she transitions into a life of homeschooled. And then she eventually, you learn the novel, quits work because she can't take the stress anymore. And then she's dealing kind of just with therapy, talking with her neighbors, other friends that she's meeting along the way to try to cope with that emotions before she kind of continues on with her path of life. So.
Wow. And the synopsis goes on to say this, When her 10-year relationship with her spontaneous best friend, Carter Higgins, ends too soon, Dylan begins to realize just how temporary life really is. What was that relationship like?
I think, so, obviously her best friend in her novel is very, very important to her. He's kind of like a brother to her, and later in the novel we see that they're kind of spreading closer together as kind of more a love relationship. And so they're very attached, they've been together for so long, they are so attached, and when he dies, it's kind of like a part of herself dies as well. So obviously that's incredibly painful for her, so yeah.
And it also says this too, with the help of a persistently witty neighbor, a mystery journal, and the slightly overworked staff of a failing diner, Dylan struggles to piece her life back together and find the courage to love life after Carter Higgins. What could be in that mystery journal in your mind?
In my mind, or
Yes.
like in my own life?
Well, no,
Okay.
I don't want to get in your life. But, theoretically, what could be in that mystery journal when you look at Dylan and also Carter Higgins and their relationship?
So the journal basically in the novel is something that has been hidden from the other characters except for one character who is Carter. It's Carter's journal that his brother actually finds and brings to Dylan, is saying, I think we want you to have this. Mm-hmm. And it's basically just a day in his life. Each day he kind of journals what goes on, as a journal is. And really, that is one of the things that kind of helps her cope after his death, because it's like, even though he has died and he can no longer talk to her, say new things, this journal is something that's new and that he can talk to her even after his death. So.
And let me go back to what your dad said to me. A young girl and how she, with the help of unexpected friends, overcome the tragedy of her friend's sudden death, and basically describing the book. How would you be able to just basically advise or even give advice to someone who's dealing with something just like this?
Personally, I have been fortunate enough to not have any best friend obviously dying from these car crashes, but since so many people sadly have done so at my school, I've seen it kind of firsthand how people have reacted to these tragedies. It's very painful and but at the same time it does bring people together. Through that kind of emotional crisis and that pain, people do come closer together.
Sure.
And so I really highlighted that in the book, that although things seem very bleak, although things in life hurt, that does not mean that that's the end. There's always going to be someone there to help you in any way, or kind of help you cope with that loss, and also recognize that life is not all tragedy, that there is some happiness and there's some light in there always. And so, yeah.
Some people will greatly appreciate that and your book.
Yeah.
And congratulations on this.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, Camryn Teder, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you so much. It was so great talking to you.
Likewise. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.